Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Saturday with Carpo, or Saturn Day, if you will, the celebration of Saturnalia, the planetary day of the week. There's so much history behind the terms and the names and the things that we use, and so much controversy surrounding these basic topics. Those who believe one particular set of rules or laws or natural laws, and others who believe in, say, God's law, and then yet others who, for some reason, believe in man's law, which is what I'm going to be talking about a bit today. All through history, civilizations have basically any group of people who was ruled by another, by kings and queens. These leaders were supposedly chosen by God. This is what they call divine rule, and it had been a pretty consistent theme through history. And during times when people had no information at their fingertips and they didn't know any better, and they had no real choice under threat of death in a lot of cases, you would do what your king told you. Whether you went to battle or you were a merchant or a farmer, you did your job and you dealt with it. And when the United States became a country, began forming as a country, at least some of the earliest goals were to get away from persecution, from judgment, from others telling us what to do. This is where the libertarian mindset comes from. And no, I'm not a libertarian, mind you. But I have reasons for that, and I probably won't get into it on this video. But let's just say that I'm not a full-blown anarchist who believes that people can govern themselves in a world like we live in today, although it is possible. And I also don't believe in, dictatorships or following what your leaders say because they're the ones who, quote, know best. In the past, when things were simple, when we knew what vegetables were going to be farmed that year, when we knew, how much wood we had to build our huts or houses, it was a lot easier to assume what the next year might bring, minus weather changes, climate, seasonal differences. In today's world, things are moving so damn fast that there's absolutely no way for people to keep up with it all. And that includes every single one of us. The average person, no matter how wise and aware of the world around them, is limited by the capacity of not only their own ability to absorb the right information, but to know all aspects of that information. Even something as, like a cell phone. You might understand how the cell phone's put together, but every component is unique, and every component and material is mined from a different place on Earth. So my point being here that it's a very complicated thing to be a human these days. It's not as simple as steak and potatoes. It's an insane world to live in. And because of this, we have slipped slowly into a mass psychosis as a nation. Because I can't extend this to the whole world. There are still places that are doing fine and others that are probably doing worse. But in the United States, with our access to information, our ability to speak freely, to share information, theoretically, open journalism and freedom to do what we like, we should be holding ourselves, I guess, to a higher standard as to what we produce. And I don't mean physically. I mean what we contribute to the world as a nation. America has fallen dramatically on education rankings. We are below. America's healthcare, we actually have a higher infant mortality rate than Cuba, for example. For all those who complain about, socialist countries, many of them actually have a much better standard of living, lower child mortality rates, as well as just better satisfaction of life. Now, is this because of the political structure? No, of course. This is extremely complicated, and I'm not trying to promote socialism here. I'm saying that when people find something that works for them, they stick with it. And only through time can you see if that's working or not. Many of the countries, for example, that do want to survive and live as socialist nations have been invaded by the U.S. over and over. We don't want others living differently. But this video isn't about nations or war. It's specifically about individuals and how we as individuals have bought into that same narrative. And now we're spewing hatred and vitriol online because we don't like how other people think or live. Now, this is extremely important that I distinguish and make this distinction here about what I mean. There are things that are worth complaining about. If a person believes in a different God than me, then that's their choice, correct? Shouldn't be any of my business, regardless of what my belief system says. However, let's say that this particular person's religion is damaging to individuals, like, say, what happens with Scientology. And you want to speak out on these things, so by the Scientologists you might be considered a hater or someone who's telling them what they should or shouldn't do, when in reality you're protecting individuals. Let me see if I can find a better way to put this. We are so easily swayed by what we want to believe. There is a, I guess you would say, as I said, a collective psychosis or mass psychosis that's really just caused by our own insecurities. If we're angry at another group of people, especially if it's politically oriented or people we've never met, almost every person I've talked to has other inner angst and problems that they need to work out. It's basically passing the buck, blaming another group for our problems. I guess a simple example would be a person can't find a job, so they blame immigrants for taking all the jobs, right? This is a regular occurrence, that people want to blame other entire groups for their circumstance, and sometimes this might be true. But what I'm getting at is when we generalize everyone else, then it's doing disservice, a great disservice to ourselves. Because a person can, if they want to be mad their whole life and they want to point the finger at everyone else, go for it. You can watch these, I can't even remember the guy's name, but there's like two different media guys. One of them is Tucker Carlson, and there's another guy that's exactly like him on the left, that they just sit there and spew all this nonsense to keep people divided, but they're picking out the stories that make people feel like they're under threat and threatened. And when people feel threatened, they feel fearful, they get angry about it, and they lash out. So, the power of the mind to create, let's just say the power of the mind to create a happy state or a negative state is, I think, much more than we give credit for. Psychosis can be caused by a type of hypnosis, a mass hypnosis that has been pulled over the people's eyes for a long time. The idea that you need to be told what to do. That you as an individual are incapable of thinking for yourself, and that you need A, B, or C, whether it be your government or your religious institution or even your parents, which in a lot of cases the kids are far wiser than their parents were. But there's this, no, you do as I say, not as I do. And so there's, when I'm talking about the power of the mind, good thing that comes to mind would be voodoo or the power of curses. Curses themselves might be meaningless, but if you tell a person you put a curse on them, the person can convince themselves that you've basically killed them. You are able to kill yourself, not to be morbid here, but by thinking about it, if you truly have the faith in it. And it's an interesting concept that you've probably heard of placebo. Everyone knows that if you take a pill and you think it's helping you, then you can actually heal. It's crazy. The stories are wild. There have been really in-depth studies done on placebo, and even when the medicine works better than placebo, the placebo usually works to help people overcome ailments. They feel less pain. They might heal quicker. Cancers can go into remission. It's a fascinating aspect of the human mind, and one that should be studied in full depth, and it should be on the top of our minds all the time. If you decide to be mad, you will be mad. You choose your emotion most of the time. And at the very least, we choose how we react to other people. That's why Stoicism is such a valuable asset. The ability to just walk away from something without being emotionally charged by it. Or if you are emotionally charged by it, that you can get over it quick and get back with your life. So the placebo effect is one thing, as I said, that makes you think medicine works, that it doesn't. But there's also the nocebo effect. And that is basically what curses are, for example. The nocebo effect is where you tell a person that they are sick, and they believe that they are sick. You tell them that they're in danger, or that they're cold, or they're hot, and all of a sudden they're cold or hot, or they feel like they're in danger. This goes along with our pattern recognizing part of our human mind. It helped us survive. And people often use the metaphor of the snake in the grass or the lion in the bushes. You might see a face in the bushes that's not there. But it's better to think a lion's there and to be wrong than to not see it at all and get eaten. And this is what leads into pareidolia and apophenia, which is seeing patterns that don't exist, or seeing faces in the clouds or elsewhere. Most of us have it. Some of us have it to an extreme degree. But when people start to see patterns in things that don't exist, they start pointing the fingers at people as being let's just say it leads to, belief in reptilians and some of these more outlandish ideas about, flat earth, whatever you name it. I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there who believe that flat earth is legitimate, so I won't use that one. But there's a feeling you get when you first take a psychedelic, let's say, if you've taken LSD or something before. Within a couple minutes, a person will feel a head change, and they'll say, oh, it already hit me, it's already kicked in. This goes way back to the placebo effect, but people can have the same feeling even if they take bunk acid. But often the feeling comes before you even take it. It hasn't entered your bloodstream. I'll give you a better example, and one that most of you can probably relate to. So what happens if you chop up a hot pepper and you go to put it to your mouth? What happens? Or if you're about to eat a very spicy burrito that you had before. You have no spice in your mouth whatsoever. You haven't even taken a bite or smelled it yet, and your mouth starts watering and your tongue starts tingling. Why and how? Now people just think of this as, it's because you know what's coming. But what does this tell us about our brains? It tells us that our brains can decide how we want to feel. We can feel spice before we feel spice. It doesn't seem like much, but I think it's a very important thing to remember. So this leads me to the power of suggestion and hypnotism and the mass psychosis and the mass hypnotism that has been pulled over the people over the last, several decades, longer. Over society for a long time. But very specifically, it has unfolded over the last year and a half during this COVID outbreak, where I'm able to set aside all of these factors that don't matter, such as, did it come from a lab or was it natural? I don't care. I do, but what I'm saying is it's not relevant to the point I'm going to make here. But, are masks effective or not? Are vaccines effective or not? In the end, all these questions pale in comparison to the one that really matters. How much are people using this to control the narrative and to create a fear in people and give them... How do we know that vaccines aren't creating a placebo effect in some people and a nocebo in others? In other words, what you believe about how you react to disease can often determine how well you fare in that disease. We've all heard stories of people dying because they've just lost hope. But what does that really mean? Oh, they just gave up. When you really analyze that, it means that they decided they didn't want to live anymore. Yes, our brains can control how we live, how we die, how well our immune systems work, and fight things off. We even have all these, natural plants, mushrooms that we've grown alongside that have been historically shown to help immensely in a lot of these things, and we ignore them. So in the last year and a half, we've gone into a straight up trust what you're told by authority, do what you're told by authority, and don't question the results. But more importantly, don't share any of the information that conflicts with what the mainstream narrative wants you to believe. And I know that's, to some that may sound a little conspiratorial. To others, I know they're right in line with what I'm saying here and understand where I'm coming from. Anyone who has an opinion that's outside of the mainstream narrative is considered conspiratorial or lunatic. I've seen this for a long time. I know people have accused me of doing that to people when they bring up a conspiracy of some sort or a belief system, but that's because I've analyzed and looked through those things. I mean, sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they just don't matter. But what really does matter, and what I want you to take away from this, is our thoughts on things are extremely important. So regardless of how you feel about the current pandemic, if you're vaccinated or not, whether you are angry about masks or not, remember, you're only in charge of your own emotion and how you react to things. You have a right to get angry and frustrated if you feel like your freedom and your rights are being infringed. So when a lot of people stand up and feel a certain way, it's important to recognize that. I may lean left, but I'm disgusted with the way some of the people on the left talk, saying, well, if you don't get a vaccine, you're basically it's like drunk driving. And I thought, that's an interesting comparison. Can we say the same thing about eating at McDonald's and being too fat? Because that's a comorbidity, which is in something like 75 to 80% of the cases, the bad cases, are people who are overweight. But we treat weight as if it's something that we can't talk about. It's crazy, the topics that we can't even discuss anymore. Yeah, they call it fat shaming, right? But we can shame somebody for not taking an injection of an experimental medication. And that's what it is, a medication, because not enough research has been done. There are all these breakthrough cases going on right now. It's really messed up out there. That's all I can say. And it's not just what's going on with COVID. I'm just using that as an example of how it has brought into the public eye something that the whole world can share and see, finally, talk about one topic and see how they've been lied to and fooled by their own governments, by their own scientists, by their own doctors. But more than that, it's not that people are all just lying. What we've revealed, even more importantly, is people are fucking stupid. They're stupid. They just follow what they're told. They won't think for themselves. They refuse to step outside of the box of the standard narrative. And there may have been one time in the past where you can convince people that there was a side that's right and a side that's wrong. Today, not happening. It's completely spread out because the differences aren't subtle anymore. It's not like the left and the right are intermingled and sharing ideas but have some differences. It's like, no, we are polar opposites. If you do this, you're an idiot. And if you do this, you're an idiot. And the way we're treating each other is as if we have entered a childlike state of mass psychosis. We are losing our minds and having a national psychotic episode. So what do we do when people have psychosis? Two choices. You can medicate them, or you can give them CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which has been shown to be much more effective. And all that means is talking to each other. So let's give it a shot, folks. Let's talk to each other. Let's have conversations about things. Instead of accusing everyone else of being the root of our problems. Because a lot of people are mad about a lot of things going on right now, and I guarantee we're not pointing our fingers in the right place. But when we don't know where to look, we just point it wherever we can. It's important not to do that. Don't get in screaming matches with people online. It's just unproductive. It solves nothing. But more than that, turn off the media. I mean, I urge everyone to just turn off the news completely. I want you to walk away with one thought here. It would be, consider this. For the next day or the next week, try something. Every time you get a little flustered or frustrated about something that bothers you, write down the source of where it came from. Now I'm going to do this too. I'm starting actually today. I thought of this yesterday, and this is why I wanted to share it. Write down every time you get a little flustered or frustrated, and then write where you heard it or how it happened. Then go back after a week. Tally them all up, figure out how many of those were things that came from something you saw on the internet or TV. Then compare that to how many things came from actual interactions with strangers, and then how many of them came from family. And I think that there would be a correlation here, that most people's frustrations generally come from things that aren't even in their control, or things we hear about. How dare this person do this to this other person? Or I can't believe someone would beat this lady like this. She's an old lady, but if you never heard about it, it wouldn't affect your life. It's a tricky one, but a lot of folks who get mad about everything else in the world also have a lot of personal problems in their family and home life that is just kind of taken out. But I don't know. For our own best interest, writing things down and journaling can be very useful. That's all I got. Turned out to be way longer than I anticipated, but don't they all? Peace out.